Well, we've made it. October 2020. And tonight, we're going to talk about John Carpenter's Halloween. So, I've been waiting to do this one for a while. I'm going to go in depth on certain things and be brief with other things. There are certain movies in this franchise I really love. Some that are just horrible pieces of crap. So I won't spend too much time on them. But I just mainly want to get to the good stuff. I'm gonna rant a little bit though. So to start off, I'll say I knew about Freddy and Jason far before I knew about Michael Myers. Probably around 92 or 93 when I first came across Halloween. And I had some family over from England, and my cousin Marilyn, unfortunately, who's no longer with us, she was older than me, and she was into the horror movies. That's what she called them. She called them the horrors. One afternoon, she was just over the house, and Halloween 2 was on. And she was really excited it was on, and she was watching it, and I had no idea what it was, and she's, you've never seen Halloween? And I'm like, no, I have no idea what you're talking about. I know Freddy, Jason, Chucky, I knew all that stuff, but I'd never heard of Michael Myers. To be honest, I was probably afraid at that age. I was 92, I was 10, so I was more into, Spider-Man and watching Christopher Reeve, as Superman. That was my thing, Michael Keaton's Batman. That was my deal. But she was a guest, so we watched what she wanted, and I wasn't really sitting on the couch and, really, acting like I was into it. I was kind of sitting in a chair next to the TV, kind of just leaned over watching it, and within 10 to 15 minutes, I was completely pulled in, and I couldn't look away from the screen. And I think I remember hoping my mother wouldn't come in and make me stop watching it. Normally, I don't think she would let me, but because Marilyn was watching it, then it was okay. So we finished that, and I thought it was great. It was the mood, the music, everything. I'm not even into the gore or anything like that, and there was more gore in part 2 than the original. But I didn't find it particularly, gory. It's not like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But it was all about the vibe. The music was incredible. The cinematography, the look and the feel of it. The sense of dread, Loomis, chasing after him. And I hadn't seen the first. So when she said the first one's even better, it was just left up to my imagination at that point. So I thought this movie was really good. I can only imagine how good the first one was. So that was my introduction to Halloween, to Michael Myers. And once I saw Halloween 2, probably not even the whole movie, I probably saw half of it. But when I saw half of Halloween 2 on TV, I was hooked, and I had to see it all. So what I'm going to do this time is, I'm just going to kind of go through each film a little bit, starting from the beginning to the end, and then I'm going to come back and talk a little bit more in depth about some of my favorite stuff. But we can start with the immortal classic, John Carpenter's 1978 Halloween. It's no surprise. It's the best in the franchise. It's the best. It's my favorite horror movie, but it might even be my favorite film. Flash Gordon might be my second favorite. I'm not sure. Vastly different. And then there's Teen Wolf. So, no, the original Halloween, 1978, is a masterpiece. It's a classic. It's more than a slasher film. It's more than just, a low budget horror movie. They tapped into something. just basically what I said about Halloween 2, everything was just better in Halloween, the original. I will admit, when I first saw it, I was a little disappointed upon my first viewing, because Halloween 2 is a bit more intense at times, and this seemed more tame. But every time I watched it, it got better, and then better and better. And so since, the mid-90s, I've been watching it since then, so over 25 years. And I still try to watch it at least once a year. There might have been a couple of years I skipped it. Maybe I watched Halloween 3 that year. We'll get to that. Yeah, I try to watch Halloween every year around this time. But pretty much everything about the movie is fantastic. Even the goofy acting. I mean, some younger people today might try to watch and be like, "Oh, the acting's so bad." This is 1978, and things were a little bit different then, especially for a movie like this. It wasn't taken that seriously. And acting, even in the 80s, was still not like it is now. A lot of actors were used to stage acting and being a little bit more dramatic and speaking louder because they were used to it. If you were going to be an actor on stage, you had to project. You couldn't be like Mark Wahlberg and like, yeah, I'm gonna get those fucking guys. You couldn't do that in those days. No one would hear you. So the way everybody acted was they had to project. But besides that, so the acting, not being the greatest, it almost is like a satire sometimes. Like, they're just representing dumb high school kids. And they do it perfectly. They're all older, obviously. They're older than actual high school kids. I think Jamie Lee Curtis was the youngest at 19. That was her first movie. No, I can get past the acting. It serves its purpose. But every image is like a painting to me. The sound design, the music, the lighting of Dean Cundey, it's perfect. So clearly that one's my favorite. To go back to Halloween 2, I've noticed in the last few years or so that Halloween 2 gets a bad rap. Some people even like Halloween 4 more than 2. They say Halloween 2018 is better than 2. I think Halloween 2 is great. It's a perfect follow-up. It takes place the same night. So when Halloween 1 ends, Halloween 2 picks up exactly where it left off, and it just continues that night. So that's just a great model for a sequel. And there's an energy to Halloween 2 that I never hear anybody talk about this. They just say how, if you watch any documentaries about it, they'll say how, everything had to be more intense and they had to up the gore, up the action, and it just became a slasher movie. And the story wasn't as good. He wasn't stalking as much as he did in the first. I mean, seems like people wanted a repeat of the first film. You can't do that. You can't just have the same thing over again. And so yeah, number one, you can't have the same thing over again. Number two, it's taking place in the same night. You can't have that build up. And my favorite aspect of Halloween 2 is once the events of, the first one happen and the second one starts, now everybody's aware. The police are there, the neighbors are notified, they bring Laurie to the hospital, and the police are looking for him. It's on the news. Nobody knew he was there. Nobody knew what he was going to do except for Loomis in the first one. So Halloween 2 almost makes Halloween 1 even better, because he just he talks about the evil that he's capable of. Loomis talks about how evil he is the whole time before you see any of it. And when Halloween 2 starts, basically, as for Michael Myers, the gloves are off. He's been revealed. We know about him now. People in the neighborhood say they've seen him. The police now believe Loomis. The carnage has taken place. Halloween 2 feels to me like what takes place after the credits, which is a strange way to think, I know, but it is the way I think sometimes. Like, you know, when a movie wraps up, either a happy ending or a cliffhanger ending, or a, you know, an open-ended one where you don't know what happens, and then it ends, and then you see the credits coming up. The credits roll, and you go back to your life. Well, just imagine for a second, you just finished watching Halloween. The credits are rolling, and it comes to the final credits. The screen's black. And then we see the Myers house again. And then we see the Strode house again. And we see all the locations. It's almost like for them, the movie didn't end. They don't get to go back to whatever they were doing, or they don't get to go to bed. The nightmare continues. And that is what Halloween 2 feels like to me. After an ordeal like that, you want to rest, and the movie doesn't. There's no need for him to stalk anymore. There's no need for him to play games or tricks, or there's no reason for him to dick around anymore. It's like, people know about me. I'm on this mission, and he has been shot at this point a number of times. He's been stabbed a number of times. He's fallen from the balcony, and clearly in this one, there's something more than, he's more human than human. Well, Rob Zombie pun there. But there is something about him where it's like, okay, there's something else driving this being. He's not human. Something is driving him. He is darkness. He is the boogeyman. So those things I do like. Those are the things I do like about Halloween 2. Once again, some of the acting isn't the greatest. There's some cheap shots. Some of the gory stuff I'm not a big fan of. I can get past most of that. The sister angle, the brother and sister thing, where Michael Myers is revealed to be Laurie's brother, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with it. A lot of people hate it. A lot of people don't think it adds to the story. I think it can, in a way. When he first sees her, she was just a baby the last time he probably saw her. And, but if he remembers she exists, and if there is something else driving him, then when he sees her, he knows it's her, and he recognizes her. And that's what makes him follow her. So that's all it has to be. It doesn't have to be any other reason for him to be going after her. It's just that he killed his sister because he was a, confused young child blinded by rage. I mean, you could talk about the psychology of him all day long, but that angle never bothered me. And I liked the way it ended. A lot of the time, the endings of movies is what people, get people all riled up, like, oh, that ending sucked. I thought this ending was great. Shot him in the eyes, which is highly unlikely, but it was a great visual with the blood running down the eyes. Him, thrashing around, like looking for Loomis and her, looking for the two of them. And I think the way Loomis ends it is perfect. He dies, Myers dies, and Laurie gets away, and the sun comes up, they get in the ambulance, Mr. Sandman plays, and she just drives off. To me, that's the end. That's it. That's the story I like. There's a bunch of sequels, but I think the first movie and the second movie together like that is just perfect the way it is, and he dies. It's just something that happened one night. It doesn't have to be an ongoing series. I was a fan of the original idea of Halloween being an anthology series. So by the time they got to Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, it would be a completely different story. And this movie got a lot of hate for a long time. I remember being told that it sucked. Don't bother with that, it sucks. Michael Myers isn't even in it. And this was in the 90s. But, I wanted to check it out, see what it was, see what it was all about. And I thought it was great. It had everything in it that I liked about Halloween. Did it have Michael Myers? No. Michael Myers isn't what I love about Halloween. It's the tone, the vibe, the music, the atmosphere, just that place and time. The 80s, the way things looked and felt in the early 80s. Those films really captured things. They really captured a certain vibe. So just to go back a little bit, so John Carpenter directed the first one, Rick Rosenthal directed the second, but I heard Carpenter went in and shot a lot of stuff to fix the movie. Shot some stuff for the TV version, and then he reshot some other scenes. So that was a mix mash. But the second one had a Carpenter vibe, 100%. The third one now, Season of the Witch, Tommy Lee Wallace directed it. He was offered Halloween 2. He didn't really like it. He didn't like the script, so he didn't take it. But, he got the chance to do something different for Halloween 3, and he did. And it still had that Carpenter feel. John Carpenter produced it with Deborah Hill, with Tommy Lee Wallace directing. Pretty sure Dean Cundey came back. Dick Warlock, a stuntman, he came back. He portrayed Michael Myers in Halloween 2, and he was Kurt Russell's stunt double for a long time. He was in the film. These guys in suits, they're actually androids, and he plays a few of them. And there's a very Michael Myers quality to them, just emotionless beings. But I liked Halloween 3 a lot. It was a very different story about a woman looking for a father who went on a routine supply pickup for his store to buy some Halloween masks, and he never came back. And there's this really annoying commercial. I'm sure if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not gonna sing it, but yeah, maybe I'll somehow put it in the video. But
happy, happy Halloween, 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 happy, happy Halloween, Silver Shamrock. Happy, happy Halloween, 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 happy, happy Halloween, Silver Shamrock.
It's almost time, kids. The clock is ticking. Be in front of your TV.
no, you know what I'm talking about. So the Silver Shamrock Company is a company that makes these masks. They're like the most popular Halloween item. Everybody wants one. All the kids want them. And basically all this weird shit starts happening. A raving madman runs into the hospital, and he's got one of the masks and gets the attention of one of the doctors, and kind of freaks him out. And the doctor ends up talking to the woman who's looking for her father. And basically the two of them end up going on a little adventure to the Silver Shamrock plant to find out what's going on. And things, just get bad from there. Things get weirder. There's a whole town that this guy owns, the owner of the company, and everybody's a little weird. And it turns out that it's basically like a cult, and some kind of druid cult of some sort, and they're inside these masks, the little silver shamrock tag that's on the masks. So the kids have to wear the masks on Halloween night and watch this special presentation that they're going to broadcast. And when that happens, the mask basically eats their face and bugs come out, and it's a mass sacrifice that this cult is trying to pull off. It's pretty out there. It doesn't 100% make sense at times, but the vibe is there, the music, the feel, everything's there. And it's a fun, zany, kind of out there Halloween movie. They even reference Michael Myers and Halloween in the film, I think twice. There's a scene where they're in a bar and it's on a TV in the background. So in this film, Halloween with Michael Myers is a movie. So it kind of exists in our world per se. But the end of the movie is great. I don't want to spoil anything, so I won't spoil the end, but it's a very Twilight Zone-ish kind of ending. And it's one of the 3, I guess, apocalyptic films in John Carpenter's film career. Part of his apocalyptic trilogy, I guess you could say. But no, a lot of people hate this movie because it has nothing to do with Michael Myers. And I just think that's stupid. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's just a dumb way of thinking. It's very close-minded. Halloween was meant to be an anthology series. When the Michael Myers story was done, they were going to do Season of the Witch. It's stories that happen on Halloween. You know, it doesn't have to be the same thing all the time. It's kind of like a Twilight Zone or Outer Limits or Amazing Stories. That would probably work now. There's a lot of, like American Horror Story, people like that. It changes every season. I haven't really seen too much of that. I've seen maybe an episode or two. But it's a hugely popular show. That's what Halloween was trying to do back in the early 80s. And I think if they kept doing that, we probably would have seen some great movies. But after the negative reception to Halloween 3, and basically the producers of the film, they didn't like what they saw, and at this time, it was the mid 80s, and Freddy was big, Jason was big. I don't think Chucky was around yet, but they had some competition now, so they had to bring back the big gun. So that brings us to Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. I didn't see this one for a while after the first 3. I couldn't find them. I mean, this is back in the mid-90s, so you had a couple of video stores you could go to. Everything was still on VHS. But I've ended up finding Halloween 4 at Blockbuster. And so I was like, okay, here we go. It looked, from the cover, it looked great. It looked like the mask from the first film. And I'm like, okay, so I wonder how this works, because he clearly died in the second one. I watched him burn. So Halloween 4 picks up 10 years after the original Halloween. So that was 78. This is 88. So it basically picks up after Halloween 2. Halloween 2 came out in 81, but it's set in the same night. So this is 10 years later. This movie had a great vibe. They really tried to bring that Halloween magic back. It didn't have the Carpenter vibe like Halloween 1, 2, or 3. Even the one without Michael Myers felt more like Halloween. But they tried. The opening credits are pretty cool. So yeah, they didn't quite have the same vibe that Carpenter got with the first couple films. I don't believe he produced this. So by the time we get to part 4, I'm pretty sure it was a completely different production team. I don't think anybody came back to make these next few films, but the production company, they were in charge. They wanted to bring Michael back and do their thing. So it takes place 10 years after the events of the first film, the first and second film. It's 1988, and apparently Michael Myers has been in a coma for 10 years. He's got bandages all around him, and he's, just been a vegetable. Hasn't said a word, he's been in a coma. So, of course, the October 30th, he's being transferred for some reason. And they acknowledge this a little bit in the opening scene. And, that they're transferring him on this night of all nights. But, what else are they going to do? So it's a pretty good opening. He's put in an ambulance and he's put in a van of some sort, and they transfer him, and he wakes up, of course. I don't know if he senses it's Halloween. So he proceeds to go crazy, and he crashes the ambulance, and he escapes. Next, we are introduced to Jamie Lloyd, who is Laurie's daughter. So Laurie from the first film, this is her daughter. Laurie's not around because apparently she was in a car accident. Both her parents, so Laurie and her husband, both died in a car accident, and Laurie was left with the Strode family. And so she's just a kid that's kind of sad, misses her mom, and they start to do some weird stuff in this one. What they start to introduce is a strange psychic link between Jamie and Michael. So Jamie is Michael's niece. They keep the brother-sister angle going here. And so Jamie's just trying to go about her day and just be a kid and everything. And she starts seeing things, and she's envisioning herself dressed up as a clown, like Michael was as a kid. And she gets spooked a lot, and so basically Michael starts to go after her. He can sense her as well, and he starts to go after her. It's a whole cast of characters here that they're all basically just cannon fodder. It's pretty much it's a shame that a genre defining franchise kind of just became a parody of itself. This movie's not horrible, it's not bad, but it kind of just retreads. It tries to kind of be the first Halloween in a way, but they try to up it, up the they try to just kick it up a notch. It's a little more violent. Loomis is back, which is great. Donald Pleasence is always great. And he finds out that the transfer ambulance, whatever, has crashed, and he goes and finds it, and he's like, oh, he's loose again. So old man Loomis has got to stop him. So somehow he survived that explosion as well, with some burns on his face. So there's a really cool scene in this where he goes to like a truck stop, where Loomis goes to a truck stop, and he's got his little gun with him, and he's looking around, he's looking for Michael, and he sees him, and there's just like a vertigo shot where Michael's standing there with bandages on his face, and they have this short exchange where he tries to talk to him, and he tries to reason with him before he goes on this rampage again. It's a great moment in the film. This movie has little moments like that I think make it better than some of the rest. But that doesn't last long, and he just goes nuts again and blasts off out of there. And I think he drives off in a truck, and the gas station explodes. It's a bit over the top. But So ultimately, this movie's okay. The worst part of the movie, I would say, is the horrible mask. From this point on, every movie was like, "Oh, are they gonna get the mask right? You know, what's the mask gonna look like this time?" And it seems like really simple. It seems like it'd be something really simple to do. Just try to make it look like the first movie. Apparently, they did get a William Shatner mask, which the first one was, but they just didn't doctor it up right. It's like they really didn't, spend too much time with it, and it looks very clean, very stark white. And the way Myers stands, the guy who played him, I'm not sure who it was, he's very stiff, and he just doesn't have the same presence that Nick Castle had in the original, or Dick Warlock even. So Michael Myers not looking the part kind of ruins it a little bit, and some might wonder, oh, how does he get this? How does he still have his mask? When it burned in part 2. Well, he just gets a new one. He's in the Halloween store with Jamie and stuff, and it just shows him, reach down and he grabs the mask, and the same mask. So there's a lot of things you got to look past to enjoy this film. But ultimately, it's an enjoyable film. It kind of feels like Halloween. It's a fun one to put on around Halloween time, and if you don't want to watch the original 2, or you already have and you want to continue, this movie ends with their psychic connection. It seems like it's amplified by the ending, and basically the whole town ends up going after Michael, and they end up in a I don't know if it's not a graveyard. It's some kind of, looks maybe it's like I think it's like a construction site or something. And they end up shooting the townspeople and the cops. They all end up shooting them. Everybody's got shotguns and they're blasting them in there. So they basically just pump him full of lead, and he falls into an old mine shaft, and it collapses on him, and that's the end. So they get away. Jamie and Rachel, their sister, get away, and they go home, and then all of a sudden we see a little recreation of the opening scene from the first film, where Jamie is dressed as a clown and puts the Halloween mask on and grabs a pair of scissors, and she kills her stepmother. And she's covered in blood, and Loomis is at the bottom of the stairs, and he's yelling like, the evil has passed into Jamie now. Oh no, she's gonna become the new killer. And then the movie ends. So it ends in a way where you think like, okay, maybe Myers is dead now, and Jamie will become this new crazy person. And that brings us to Halloween 5. The only good thing I have to say about Halloween 5 is some of the music was cool. I like the opening. I like the synthesizers. That's it. Everything else sucks in it. So apparently Michael crawls out of the mine shaft. He finds a way out like Rambo style, and crawls out, and ends up in like a little brook or in a little stream, and it washes him away, and he finds this hobo that's living on the side of the river in this little shack, and he tries to kill him, but he doesn't have enough strength, and he falls down, and apparently the hobo takes care of him, brings him in, and then a year goes by. Yeah. So this hobo looked after Michael for a year. So what? Michael was in a coma for a year again? Like, they used that one last time, and he was in a coma for 10 years. So the whole, just right from the beginning, this one is pretty far-fetched. Because it has to take place on Halloween. My opinion is they should have done the same thing as Halloween 2. They should have had part 5 take place in the same night. I think you should have crawled out of that mine shaft and then went back after Jamie, and it all be the same night. That's what they should have done. Would it have been original? No, but we're at part 5. You know what I mean? This, not like they're reinventing the wheel here. So anyway, it's a year later. Jamie is now a mute, for some reason, she's not crazy. She's not murderous. She doesn't seem to remember what she did. But when Michael wakes up after a year of laying in this hobo's house made of sticks, the mask is still conveniently, there. And he picks it up, puts it on, and he's awake now. He kills the guy. Jamie sees all this, so their psychic link is back up and running. They got Wi-Fi. So basically, I'm not even going to get into this one that much. I'm going to go through this one really briefly. Jamie's a mute. She starts seeing what Michael's doing. The mask is probably the worst in the franchise. It's horrible. I just found out this tonight that the mask is actually a mold of Greg Nicotero's face. Greg Nicotero is a special effects guy who currently is one of the major producers and special effects guys from The Walking Dead. So he's a very successful guy and everything, and he's done a lot of great work. But this mask looked awful. They also made a really stupid decision to not tuck the neck in the collar. So it's kind of just puffing out the whole time. It just looks stupid. It looks way too big on the guy's head. His hair's all over the place, and it looks really bad. It's the worst mask in the series. And the thing is, it's supposed to be the same mask as 4, and it looks nothing like it. But, the producers, they rushed this movie into production. Halloween 4 came out in 88, this came out in 89. As soon as, people went out and they saw part 4, they're like, okay, let's go, part 5. So they rushed this one out, you could tell. I think it was a pretty inexperienced director from what I remember. So roughly the story is Jamie's a mute. She can see what Michael's doing. He lumbers around during the day, and they try to recreate some of the stuff from the original Halloween, and you can't. You can't do that twice. I'll get more into that later, but for right now, I'll just say you could do it in the original Halloween because nobody knew about him. He was just a guy, and it was Halloween. So people, sometimes people walk around in masks. Haddonfield, at this time, they know about Michael Myers. They know what happened last year. They know what happened 10 years ago. So if he's just walking around during the day, people are going to call the police. He's going to stick out like a sore thumb. So they try to do some shot where like 2 of the teenage girls are standing there and they're talking, and he's like lumbering around a tree and trying to look creepy, and it just looks stupid. It just looks ridiculous. So they didn't really have that down at all. They shouldn't have even tried it. But yeah, Rachel gets killed off pretty early, and it's a drawn out sequence. When you think it's going to happen, it doesn't happen. And then like 10-15 minutes goes by, and then we're back in the same scenario, and then she does get killed. What I notice about this movie is it drags. It really drags. Not much happens at all. And everything seems to be hinging on this Halloween party that's going to happen at this barn. And Michael ends up going there, with a different mask on. He poses as one of the girls' boyfriends with a mask and drives them to the party, or drives her to the party. It's stupid. It's really dumb. There's another big thing that people hate about this movie, and it's the cops. There's 2 cops that they introduce. I never even noticed this until it was pointed out. I guess I just tuned it out, but whenever they're on screen, they have this like dun, 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 like stupid like music that plays behind them. And like sound effects, like cartoons. It's like Looney Tunes. Like seriously, like that sound it makes when someone slips on a banana peel. That is piped in to the sound design for some reason. And they finish each other's sentences like they're like a comedy cop duo, and it doesn't make any sense at all, because they'll go from that scene to like a really serious scene with Loomis. And Donald Pleasence is in this again, and he tries. He's not given much to work with. maybe he shot more footage, but all they used was him yelling at Jamie to, try to speak and try to tell him what's going on. Where's Michael? What's he doing? And he just comes off as like he's completely insane in this one. And maybe he is, you know what I mean? Maybe all this has driven Loomis to the breaking point. But it all ends pretty stupid. I think they end up at the old Myers house, and there's a big fight there, and then I think they end up. Yeah, it's not even worth talking about, honestly. Michael gets captured in the end. Throughout the film, maybe about halfway through, there's this man in black that's introduced, and he gets off a bus, and he's walking across the street, and you only ever see like his long coat and his boots, but he has this thorn tattoo, mark of the thorn right here, and Myers has one as well. So, they don't explain in this film what that is, but apparently he has some kind of connection to him. And in the end, there's a big explosion at the police station, and where they're holding Myers, and the man in black basically breaks Myers out, and that's how the movie ends. It's stupid. It sucks. It's probably the worst one of them all. The only thing good about it, like I said, is like a couple of Loomis scenes, and some of the music is okay, but most of this movie just blows. So that was 89. So I don't think the audience liked it either, because they didn't do another Halloween until, I believe it was 95, when Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers, came out. So by this time, I was all caught up. By the mid-90s, I was just about in high school at this time. And I was in middle school, or 8th grade or 9th grade, I can't remember, but I had seen all the films at this point. And I saw this trailer on TV for Halloween 6, and I was like, holy shit, another one. But it was way modernized. They brought it into today. They had a lot of 90s rock in the trailer. There was, remember the Nirvana tune "Rape Me" was in the trailer, and "Fools Shine On" by Brother Kane. It was a great tune. I actually play that in a band right now. But that was on the soundtrack. That was in the movie. The Nirvana song was not in the movie, but it was on the trailer, because that was it was a huge album. But I thought the trailer looked really good, and I thought the production looked good, and I thought, okay, man, now this is gonna be good. I wasn't old enough to go to the theater to see it, but when it came out on VHS, I did rent it and I watched it, and I thought it was okay at the time. I've gone back and forth with this one. Paul Rudd was in it. This was his introduction, and this is the first time they bring back an older character. So Paul Rudd was about probably, I don't know how old he was, but his character was about 25-ish. Yeah, I think he was probably older, I don't know. But anyway, Paul Rudd was playing Tommy Doyle, the kid from the original Halloween, the kid that Laurie's babysitting. So this is bringing Tommy Doyle back into the fold, and I liked that aspect of it. So he has been hunting Myers for years, trying to find out where he is and keeping up on him. And he's kind of the hero of this movie, and I like that. Donald Pleasance also came back. He was really old at this point. This was actually his last film. He passed away before the film was released. There's two cuts of this film. There's the theatrical release that everybody saw, but there's also a producer's cut, which is, I think it used to be hard to come by. I think you can get it a little easier now with the internet and everything, but at the time, no one even knew about it. But with the internet and everything, people started to find places that they could download it, and I guess there's a lot that's different. And I've heard it's a superior version. The ending's different. But for the most part, it seems like it's the same movie. They just improved on some scenes. Some scenes were written better, and but I've never seen. I've seen bits and pieces from the producer's cut, but I've never actually sat down and watched the whole thing. So the story here is Jamie is now, aged up. She's in her late teens, almost 20 now. So basically, after the explosion at the police station in 5, Jamie went missing and Myers went missing. Neither of them have been seen for years. Loomis retires, and apparently Jamie has been held captive by this weird cult. So looks like they brought some weird cult stuff back into the fray. But I guess Michael Myers acts as an agent for this cult, which was pretty weird because it's just so far from where they started. But that mark that was on his wrist that he shared with the Man in Black, apparently it's the mark of the thorn, and it's some cult that once again making sacrifices, on the night of Samhain and all this stuff, and basically he who is marked with the mark of the thorn has to kill his family in order to sacrifice and appease the gods and stuff. So it starts with this ritual, and Jamie is old, like I said, she's older now, and she's actually given birth. So I think it's actually even Michael's baby. It did some weird shit with this. So they have the baby, and somebody helps Jamie escape. Jamie hides the baby. She gets on a truck, drives off. A van, tracks her, hunts her down, and drives her off the road. And then Michael finds her. She's running through like a barn or something, and Michael finds her and kills her. And then Jamie's done for. 10-15 minutes into the movie. So now, that we kind of pick up following Tommy Doyle and the Strode family living in the Myers house. And Tommy finds the baby and basically, starts a friendship with the neighbors, the Strode family next door, one of the girls. And since '89, maybe they've banned Halloween. That's what it seems like. And they haven't had Halloween in Haddonfield since all the stuff with Jamie. And but this was the first year they're gonna do it finally. So it's been a few years, and I guess it's a big deal for all the high school kids. Oh, we can have a Halloween party. So there's a big some kind of production. Some radio disc jockey guys coming to town, and it doesn't really matter. It's an okay movie. It's definitely very 90s though. It came out before Scream. It was 95. Scream came out in 96. So it doesn't have all the Scream tropes, but it does feel like, a lot more 90s. It's got some pretty tense moments though. Some people like this Myers more than others. Some people like The Mask. It's better than 4. Well, no, it's better than 5. I don't know if it's better than 4. It's different than 4. It's a lot dirtier looking. It's kind of cakey, I guess you could say. But I don't know. It's just they couldn't seem to get The Mask right. I remember when it came out, and I remember thinking it looked really good, and then just years later, I don't think the same thing anymore. And I guess that's the thing about some of these films is they don't really age that well. Where Jason, always looks the same, or for the most part looks the same. It's always a hockey mask, but maybe, there's a different level of aging, or maybe there's more damage to it. But even when he gets a new one, it still looks cool. They really had a hard time with each mask in each film to get it to look right. I guess this mask seems to be a fan favorite. I don't think it's that great. The movie's okay. He is pretty brutal in this. Apparently, the MPAA, the ratings, association, whatever, they cracked down on Halloween's 4 and 5, but they let him get away with a lot more in this one. So there's a lot of, I guess there's a lot more. I think right at the beginning he like rips a guy's head off, and you see it, like they show it on AMC. Like you see like his neck with no head there. So for some reason, maybe it was just fantasy violence, so it made it past the censors. But yeah, it's a little gory, and what I did also notice with this movie is there's a lot of screaming, a lot of yelling, and it just it's a little over the top. It's just kind of off-putting. And like, I'll get into it a little bit more later, but I guess I'll tease it. I'll tease this, thought of mine right now. A lot of what I love about John Carpenter's original Halloween, a lot of the sequels don't do the things I love about them. They just try to up it and up it and up it, and I think they got kind of lost. So with this one, they tried to bring it into the 90s, and the production, of course, is better. The acting, I guess you could say, is better. But there is one scene. Now, we all know Paul Rudd's a pretty decent actor, here in 2020. He's Ant-Man, he's been in a bunch of comedies, and, he's an okay actor, he can act. But there's a scene, this was his first movie, where he's got the baby at the hospital, and he's like, I need a doctor. And the lady's like, well, I'm gonna need your license and name, I need a doctor right now. And then before she can say anything else, he just starts yelling, going crazy, like, give me a doctor. And it seems like they shot a bunch of stuff in between from when he was at like 2. And then they took like, when he was at like, 100, his intensity level went up. And it just seems really like it's a really odd edit. I bet that's not the way it went down when they shot it. So yeah, the editing is a little screwy in this movie, and same thing with part 5, the editing was bad. So a lot of the time the writer gets a bad rap, or gets all the hate for like, why did he make him say it like that? And he probably didn't. Editing is a huge factor in how the movie comes out in the end. You can have a scene beautifully written and acted, but then it comes into the editing room and they chop it up, and it just comes out like shit. So I think that's what happened a lot in this movie. And they did do a lot of reshoots. It's common now, like they budget reshoots for films now. They're like, okay, this is the film schedule, there'll be a little break, and then, maybe 3 weeks later, a month later, come back and we'll do some reshoots. Like that's all budgeted now. Back then, probably not as much. But Donald Pleasence actually passed away either right before or during the reshoots. So whatever they had written for him to do, he wasn't around for it. So we ended up with the theatrical cut, and I mean, the producer's cut is probably somewhat, incomplete as well. So yeah, so this movie gets some things right, and then it gets a lot of other things wrong. This is what I would call the final movie in the Thorn trilogy. The whole mark on the arm. So Halloween 4, they didn't show you the tattoo, but they introduced the psychic connection with Jamie. Halloween 5 continued that. They introduced the Man in Black. They showed you the tattoo. And now Halloween 6, they reveal who the Man in Black is, and it ended up being one of Dr. Loomis's associates. The character is in the first Halloween. It's the one where Donald Pleasence is walking out over the sanitarium talking to another doctor, and he says, he doesn't even know how to drive a car. He's like, well, he was doing very well last night, and maybe someone around here give him lessons. And apparently, if you're watching this timeline, we'll get into that later, this character, this Man in Black, may have been the one to give him lessons, because it was the cult and the Man in Black who unleashed Myers onto Haddonfield and to kill his family. So they, yeah, like I said, they really started going to some strange places with this film, and I don't know if anybody wanted that. I don't know if anybody, when they showed up for this movie, they wanted some weird ass cult stuff. In the end, they end up at this facility underground somewhere, and they're dealing with the cult people, and yeah, it doesn't really matter what happens there because the girl gets away, and Paul Rudd ends up beating Michael Myers over the head with a pipe. I think he injects him with a bunch of sedative, and then he beats him with a pipe, and then they escape. And Loomis stays, and the final shot of the movie is they pan to where Michael was beaten and he's gone. The mask is there, and there's one of the tubes of stuff he was stuck with, and the knife. And then you just hear Loomis yelling in the background, and then the movie ends. It says, in memory of Donald Pleasance. I guess in the producer's cut, Paul Rudd casts some druid spell on Michael, and he's stuck. I'm not really sure. I haven't seen the producer's cut, so you know what? I'm not even going to talk about that. So by the end of the film, you see his mask, Loomis is yelling, and then it just cuts to black and it's over. This would be the end of the Thorn trilogy, but also the end of this timeline.